Hello, and thanks so much for joining us. I'm Carol Jenkins. The program is Black America. In our 7 seasons, if you could imagine, we have had guests share about our resilience, the ability to act as one, our effort, youth, imaginations, and so much more. And we continue to share those stories as we enter our 8th season. And with us today is the editor of an upcoming important release, Aftermath, Life in Post-Roe America. My co-author of Black Titan, A.G. Gaston, and The Making of a Black American Millionaire. She's the mother of 3 beautiful children who happen to be my grandchildren. It's my daughter, Elizabeth Gardner Hines. She joins me as we focus on legacy and more. And thanks so much for being here, Elizabeth.
Thank you for having me.
I finally get to have a conversation with you, a quiet. Usually we're passing children left and right as somebody is going and coming because your children are extremely busy.
Yes, they are, but they're blessed to have a grandmother in their life who helps get them from place to place and takes care of them.
And just so you know, we live in the same apartment building, so I'm not that far away from them. You know, they get on the elevator to come spend the night with me. I'm that kind of grandmother. Recently, the Obamas returned to the White House to unveil their official portraits. President Obama tweeted this when future generations see these portraits by Robert McCurdy and Sharon Sprung in the White House. I hope they get a better, honest sense of who Michelle and I were. And I hope they leave with a deeper understanding that if we could make it, that they can do remarkable things too. And, you know, I was really touched when I saw them there. It was such a refreshing view, remembering of the good times in a way. I don't know, what were your thoughts about the unveiling of the portraits? First of all, beautiful portraits.
Well, that's actually what I was going to say, is that, you know, they are such beautiful portraits, that the art, the quality of the art, the level of the art is just so outstanding. And I loved that they were modern as well in their, in the artist's approach, you know, that white behind President Obama, and just the gorgeous, gorgeous detail of all of that was just so wonderful to see because it's so of the moment. And, you know, one of the things I thought actually or one of the first things I noticed was Michelle's hair.
Right.
And she was wearing braids.
Right.
And I thought, how amazing that, you know, the former First Lady would show up at the White House and have her hair in a style that, you know, my oldest daughter is wearing today and that both of my daughters wear all the time. And for them to be able to look at that again and see themselves in the images of those people. So, you know, it was wonderful to see them back. I also have to confess it felt a little bit, there was a little bit of heartbreak too because of all that has happened since then, and the very fact that, you know, we're waiting until now for them to have their portraits put on the walls. I thought, you know, that made me a little bit sad, you know, to reflect on what didn't happen as it should have happened, but it was thrilling to see them there and with the Bidens,
Yeah, and the thing that I realized too was how much we miss Michelle, you know, and how powerful she had been as First Lady. I thought she was actually more moving than the president was, as always, and she's allowed to be.
Right.
You know, when she talked about her daughters, they spent 8 years in that house being raised in the White House. And that, you know, that experience of having girls who were raised at the center, you know, of this country, as they often were, and they managed to do it, you know, and the kids came out okay, you know. It's just fantastic. And we've always been fans of Michelle Obama. Remember that?
When we went to go see her Becoming tour, right?
I know, at the Barclays Center with thousands of screaming people. I was just wearing my Becoming cap the other day. You know, huge Michelle Obama fans, because you're right. The braids and everything that she has to say about family that she, I think, conveyed extremely well.
Yeah, no, it was beautiful. And, you know, I was thinking back, you know, it will be 14 years in November that President Obama was elected. And part of the reason that I remember that so clearly is because I was pregnant with Avery when he was elected. And I remember so clearly thinking about what the world that my or the perceived world that my child was going to inherit, who also happens to be biracial, and that she would be born into this world where the first thing she would know was a black president. And I think it has been really meaningful, for her, for, my younger children, your younger grandchildren, for all of their friends to grow up in a place where the idea, or in a context where the idea of a black person being president is, it's not foreign. It's not, will it ever happen? It's, yes, that happened. Ensuring that we have an opportunity for that to continue is now our work. So that's what we do.
So we should say that the grandchildren are now 13-year-old Avery and twin Sam and Sophie, who are 9. So 4th grade and 8th grade, and going through all of that. The only thing I remember from the Obama's election, and remember those shots of Jesse Jackson and Oprah Winfrey crying their eyes out? That was me.
That's right.
I was sitting in my house doing the same thing, as people describe ugly crying, of just, oh my goodness, this has finally happened. What? Because it was such a shock. But we had been through all, I would hope that you had felt more encouraged about the progress of things. We had been through the 60s and the really hard fights, as you know from our family history, in Alabama and desegregation and all, which is why we, did the book about our uncle, A.G. Gaston. So, I think that, and I know that we should say that our producer, the extraordinary Audra West, has created this bowl. So we're going to go to the bowl for some questions to talk about, things. And of course, my major question was, will I be able to read it? Can I see it? A moment that changed your life.
A moment that changed my life. Well, I would say becoming a parent changed my life in the most profound ways. And I think going back to the Obamas, it really was to be extending my family, building on our family legacy right in a period of time where there was such extraordinary change happening in this world, and where one could feel so hopeful about the future in a whole new way. Having a child in the midst of all of that was life-changing. I think it's life-changing for everybody to have a child, and I think that that experience has made me probably both slowed me down a little bit in terms of my need to, get a lot of stuff done, focused on certain things, but also sped up my desire to see our world progress, right? And probably is the inspiration for the work that I'm doing now in terms of the book that I have coming out and that sort of thing.
Right. Well, before we talk about your book, which I'm very, very interested in, the thing that changed my life, other than having you,
Yes.
and adopting your brother, building a family. At one point, we had so many children in the house, we lived in a little town, and the woman who ran the post office in town said, "What's going on there? No one has the same last name in that household." I said, "Yes, it's a building. I'm building a family in the new way, which used to be the new way. Now is the way families are built all the time now." But I would say one of the things that changed my life came late in life is when I went to South Africa to cover the release of Nelson Mandela from prison, because I had grown up with this story of Nelson Mandela. Ultimately, it was 27 years that he stayed in prison. And having the ability to be there when he was released, to be standing outside of his house in, the little, black township, Soweto, when he came out in the morning as he was watching the school children go by. And, in South Africa and many of the African countries, the children have these wonderful uniforms and I remember just the colors passing by this man who I imagine had been living in a black-white world, monochromatic world for so many years. And here he was seeing these beautiful children, beautiful black children walking by. They had no idea who he was, at 6 or 7, But then the thousands and thousands of people that packed the stadiums to welcome him and for what that would ultimately mean, the sort of empowerment that they expected. And certainly progress has been made, but as we know in Africa, as in the United States, you get a President Obama and then you get a backlash. You get Nelson Mandela released from prison, and then you've got to deal with centuries of issues of baked in, bad stories. So,
Well, you've gotten you've had such a close view on so many incredible, historical moments. I mean, that I can remember when you left to go to South Africa to be there, and being here in New York City and watching it on TV, and to know that you were there and a part of all of that. I mean, it was extraordinary.
That was quite a story. And you should also know that my daughter, this daughter right here, when I did the news, used to sit under the anchor desk. And my mother would be watching, and she would say, well, I think I can see Elizabeth's puffs, so tell her to scoot down, would send me a message. Her brother was a totally different story. We couldn't let him anywhere near the studio, and all of that remains true today. They have different personalities. Different personalities. Should we go to the bowl?
All right, it's my
your
turn. I get to ask. Let's see. Oh, gosh, wow, this is a good one. 3 books you would leave to the next generation, and why?
Oh my goodness, 3. And they keep trying to get me to give my books away, right?
Essential reading for the next generation.
Essential reading. Well, I think anything by Toni Morrison, anything by James Baldwin, and any of the books that include works by Romare Bearden, all of which, I love. I was never, the Bearden is my favorite artist. And if you don't know about Romare Bearden, you must, it's just extraordinary work. Toni Morrison, who won the Nobel Prize for Literature, and I covered, interesting news story, I covered her when she was going to win the Nobel, and because I was working in local news, breaking news, they cut the story at the last minute because there had been a train delay or accident or something, and so I was furious. I mean, it ran in some altered state, but I said Toni Morrison winning the Nobel, and and that's what we were up against in local news. It's local news is breaking news, so
right.
The subway was higher on the list than
Toni Morrison.
Morrison. So what books are you going to leave for?
Oh gosh, well you stole my Toni Morrison. I was going to say Beloved, which that would be something that changed my life. Actually, reading that book in high school gave me a totally different view of both what life in America actually might have been like at a certain period of time, and also what was possible for Black women. So that reading that book, it floored me. So Beloved, certainly, we're on the same page. James Baldwin. And actually, because I had this wonderful, very rich education, which was provided to me by my mother.
You're so welcome.
Thank you very much. I am also really a big fan of, I think reading Shakespeare is really critical. And I think if people, there's such a broad sense of humanity in his plays. And I think, I encourage my children to read his plays and read them critically. I don't think we have to read them and simply say, everything is perfect here and, it's one voice. But, I do think, there's a lot there that you learn from digging
Just
in.
the value of an education. I have no idea what Shakespeare is talking about. But I always go to every performance, every production, and I'm like, Elizabeth, what are they saying? What are they talking about? And she knows. She could explain it. All right, why is the talk about race important to have with your children?
Oh, The talk.
The talk. But the thing is that I always say, everybody, when they say the talk, they think they're talking about boys, the talk we give to our boys, and then there's the talk we have to give to our girls, too. Do you want to talk?
Yeah, I mean, I
little
think
bit
the
about it.
talk is important because it's about their lives. I mean, it's important because, you know, they have to have a sense, unfortunately, of how they will be perceived in the world. And, you know, it's really hard, I just find, you know, to figure out when is the right time to have that talk because, you know, it's critical and it is heartbreaking. You know, it's the second time I've used that word, but it is because it is patently unfair that we should have to have those kinds of conversations with our children. And, you know, but this is the world we live in. This is the reality.
I know, and so much because of George Floyd and, you know, the blatant attacks by police on black men for traffic stops. And, you know, it's my theory of, look, why are police following anybody because of a broken taillight or whatever? Please, you know, send them a ticket. And all of this interaction on that level is unnecessary. So that's the black boy thing of, like, do not raise your voice, you know, do exactly as they say, keep your hands visible a little. I mean, that's what we say to the boys. Increasingly, we're seeing that the girls need that advice too.
Yeah.
But more importantly for the girls, it is the beauty piece of it. You know, that, you know, to say to your child or your grandchild, listen, the world does not think you're beautiful. You know, you're not blonde, you don't have blue eyes, you're not the typical, you know, so-called American thing. But you are beautiful. We do love you. And this is what grandmothers and mothers and aunts and godmothers are saying. You're beautiful, you know, and, you know, but the standard, you know, for women especially, I think it's more, you know, that's more the thing for girls than it is for boys, that emulating, you know, what little white girls look like and who are charming and cute on television is something that our girls, you know, just have to understand their beauty, that we appreciate them.
Yeah, well, but one thing that I think that has changed, I would say, since my own childhood, because I can remember very clearly, watching television and seeing nobody who looked like me until maybe The Cosby Show or something like that. I mean, there were here and there, you know, but the standard was very clear. I think one thing that's wonderful to see now is the increased diversity that actually is there. You know, it's by no means perfect, but I know that, you know, my kids, when they're watching TV now, you know, the casts, you know, there are people that look like them and they can reflect on that. And, you know, I think about, you know, Rihanna and, you know, Fenty Beauty and the impact that has, you know, to be driving across 86th Street and to see ads, you know, with women of all colors and all shapes and sizes, you know, for my kids, boy and girl, you know, all genders, to be able to look out and see that reflection, you know, that's different from the 1980s and even the 1990s. And so, you know, I feel hopeful about, you know, I mean, we still have plenty of work to do, and there's still, you know, all sorts of isms out there. There's colorism, there's sizeism, you know, all of that we're still wrestling with as parents. But I'm glad to see that it's at least, you know, they have some mirrors, you know, in a way that maybe we didn't have.
You know, that's what I say to Sophie all the time. Sophie is our, how do we describe her?
She's our firecracker.
Firecracker, but at any rate, ever since she was like 3 or 4, she said she wants to go into finance, right? And the story never changes. Everybody else has a different career than her. Sophie wants to go into finance, and she also loves makeup and clothes and all of that. And I keep whispering, Rihanna, you know, she's the richest woman in the world, or something to that effect, right? You know, and she says, yeah, I get it. I can have it all.
Yeah.
So that's good. Is it my turn or your turn?
I think it's your turn.
Okay.
Oh no, it's my turn.
Oh,
it's my
see that?
turn. I'm
she's
sorry.
Taking her turn.
I know.
Never let these kids. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Sorry, this is a really good one.
Okay.
If you could change anything in your life career, what would it be?
In my life or career?
Yes.
Oh, if I could change it, what would I do? I probably would have gone back to law school.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow.
And gotten a law degree, and then would have, proceeded on. But I think what happened to me is that I got the notice that I was accepted to law school, and the notice that I was expecting you at pretty much the same time. So I spent. I went to law school like this, working full time, going at night and whatever. So I would probably go back to law school after having had you and whatever, and gotten a degree. And I still may. I hear
it's not
these
too
great
late.
stories, of right. How well I, get to reading 6 hours a night. Is.
Yeah, right.
I think law school may be beyond me, but who knows? Something like that.
Well, I'm glad you didn't go back to law school, because look at all of the things that you did and accomplished. And I mean, maybe you would have done them anyway, but I think you had an extraordinary, career and got to do incredible things, and have exposed your family to so many different people and experiences. The world is so glad you didn't go back to law school.
Thank you. I have no regrets, though. No regret. The only regret I have is that when I left television as a reporter, that I did not marry a makeup artist, because then it would have solved, lifelong problems after that, But other than that, I have no regret. That, and, as we tell, my daughter gets angry with me because I tell this story that I once dated Bobby De Niro, and she's furious that she was not Bobby De Niro's daughter at this point.
I'm good. I'm good.
You need to answer the question.
Oh, I have to answer. What if I could change anything
Anything.
in my life or career? I don't think I would, actually. I try to live a life where, to your point, I don't have any regrets. I don't want to. And also, I remember reading a quote at one point that regret is actually a useless emotion, because it's, it just, sort of ties you up in these knots of, oh, I could have, and there's actually nothing you could do about that. So spending the time thinking about it. And also, I'm very happy with my life. I really am. I feel very blessed by my family, by the things I get to do in my life with my career, and those sorts of things. And I always think to myself, well, if I changed any of it, then everything would change, right? So I wouldn't change any of it. Are there little things here and there? I don't know. Politics would be interesting, to sort of dig in there a little bit. But I think it's so far so good. We're going to knock on.
Yeah. Well, that's the perfect time to talk about your book that's coming out shortly. I was thrilled to hear, this is after the Roe decision, that you were one of the people who jumped into action and said, wait a minute. So you want to talk a little bit about Aftermath?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, I mean, it was just that night that a friend of mine texted me. I think it was May 2nd or 3rd, and I got this text while I was putting the kids to bed saying, they're doing it. And I wasn't exactly even sure what he meant. And then I went, I went to the New York Times and I saw the news about the leaked draft. And I think for those who were paying really close attention and who work in the movement, it was not a surprise. We knew this was coming, it was coming, but that moment just made me feel sick. It just made me feel sick. And, my phone started lighting up, from texts from other friends saying, what are we going to do now? What are we going to do? And I kept hearing that question and I kept thinking about it. And the next day, a friend said to me very pointedly, because I was irate and losing it, just so angry. And she said to me, well, what are you going to do? And that's really it. All of us have a decision to make when things happen that that we are not happy with. Are we just going to sit and text our friends about it and post on social media about how upset we are, or are we going to actually take action? And because I happen to know somebody who runs, an imprint, I got in touch with her and I said, how fast can you put together a book that talks about reproductive freedom and reproductive justice and what is at stake in this next election, and what we can do, to stand up for our rights? And she said, I can do it pretty fast if you'll step in as editor. And so that's what we've done is, we've put together this book. It's a collection of essays, contributions from 38 different authors, some of whom are journalists, some of whom are experts in the field, some of whom are just everyday people who have had to make choices about their reproductive health, and they were willing to step forward and talk about their experiences. So we have these, great stories, and the proceeds from the book will go to fund reproductive health care, advocates and outlets all over the country.
What a fantastic project, And I have a couple of friends whose work you're editing. I want you to know she's a very tough editor. They call me up and they said, I am so scared. No. I am handing in draft 3 to Elizabeth. Can you let her know? Let me know what she thinks. So it is. It's a wonderful, wonderful collection. It's out in October.
That's right.
I want to say once again that all of the proceeds go to help women who will need, and girls. This is a startling thing about all of this as we're finding out. The 10-year-old girls, the 13-year-old girls who people seem to think that they are wise enough to have children and raise children. We've gotten into a very, very difficult situation. Quickly, your thoughts on the election and whether or not you think that we can save the democracy, we can pull away from autocracy. Are people aware enough of what danger we're in?
I hope so. I think we'll see. People have to get out and vote. And I know that there are plenty of people, in Texas, for example, people who live in those communities will say, well, we try to vote, we go, and frankly, we're a little bit oppressed. We're not just, we don't have, voting rights restrictions are real, and they are really impacting people's lives and their abilities to cast their vote. I think we have work to do. I think we have, we've got 2 months, and I think everything we can do to mobilize people to get out and use their rights where they can and when they can is going to be to the good, because I think this is a really critical moment in the history of our democracy, and we need to help people understand that their voice does still matter. We have to use these votes,
right.
While we have them. And as, our friend Gloria Steinem says, voting is not the most you can do, but it is certainly the least. And so, let's gear up and get out there and fight for the rights that so many people fought for us to have.
Great. And go buy my daughter's book. It's Aftermath. It will help you understand what we're up against in November. Many terrific stories. And thank you so much, my darling, for being with me today. And this is Black America. That's it for us for this time. Thank you for joining us. I'm Carol Jenkins. I'm so excited to have had a conversation with my daughter. We will see you the next time.